Hi everyone, thank you for being in the audience. About 6 months ago when I was putting this panel together, sparked by Jon's changes to his label, I thought it would be a great idea to bring a lot of friends and colleagues together for the panel. Little did I know that Underworld were playing at Heart last night, so it's going to be a very interesting panel one way or another. We're going to talk about the various models facing electronic music labels and the opportunities as well. But before we get into that, I'd just like everyone to introduce themselves. If we can start with Matt on my right, please.
Hello everyone, my name is Matt Riley. I head up A&R for AWAL, which is Cobalt's recorded music business. We work with artists from Nick Cave to deadmau5. I personally have been working with a lot of new artists coming through, the likes of Bruno Major and Tom Misch and Rex Orange County, who've amassed 500 million streams in the last year or so.
Hi, my name's Stuart Knight. I'm Managing Director at Toolroom Records. We are 15 years old this year, and yeah, that's us, that's me.
Hi everyone, I'm Simon Hills, artist and label manager at Axtone, which is the label owned by AWAL, who you might know from being AWAL, or as part of AWAL, Ingrosso and Swedish House Mafia.
I'm Lohan Presenter. I'm the chairman of Ministry of Sound. We've got a little nightclub, and we had a record label, we have a music publishing company, and we now have a beautiful shared workspace and members club, gratuitous plug. But we've been through everything in electronic music over the last 30 years.
Hi, Jon Rundell, artist and producer, DJ, and also label manager at Intec, which most people might know through Coxie. Decided to basically give all my music away for free, so here we are.
I'm Jenni Cochrane. I'm Director of Culture and Partnerships at AEI Group. For those of you who may not be familiar with it, we're a multi-channel network of brands and YouTube channels, including huge brands, including UKF, The Sound You Need, No Copyright Sounds, Drum and Bass Arena. My role is not so much in the label and music side of the business, but more in the kind of culture partnership and kind of people side. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about our sort of YouTube model later on.
Dean Wilson, manager of deadmau5 on all things Mousetrap, and CEO of 720.
Brilliant, thanks everyone. So we've got 40 minutes to get through a lot. So we're just kind of set the scene before we dive into the discussion around streaming. So, Lohan, if I could go to you first, were the good old days of vinyl and CDs really the good old days?
Yeah, it was pretty. There you go. Is that good enough?
It's brilliant. Thank you. Why were they the good old days?
I looked at your notes, Mark.
Thank you.
And you know, in terms of what people were prepared to pay for music back then, that's what they were prepared to pay. And I don't think you can say, and now the expectation is different, but we were selling huge volumes of records, and youth spending wasn't as fragmented as it is now. I mean, people are spending money on all sorts of different media and all sorts of different streaming platforms, and over-the-top television services, and there's so much more going on. But music was the heart of everything that we were doing in the 80s and 90s, and it was a huge amount of consumer spending, and that money washed through the industry, and it washed through to then investment in artists, and it was a great time.
And do you think that the industry was really entitled to that revenue, or was it inflated revenue because of the CD gold rush? Was it real, or?
I don't think you can say whether something's entitled or not. It was there. People were prepared to pay the money, and so that was coming through. So it's not a question of entitlement. The industry has always gone through format changes, whether it was vinyl to CD, and the CD thing, the CD boom in the 90s, where people were buying their entire record collections all over again, was fantastic. It happened to an extent when downloads came in as well, and people didn't want to rip their old collections, and they were going and buying that through again. And You know, we've seen format transitions over the years all the way through, and there are bumps and there are positive bits and there's decline of old formats and those crossovers happened. So, and there will be something new that comes along next. I don't know what it is, but...
Yeah, thank you. Stuart, I mean, so Toolroom's 15 years old. How different was it running a label 15 years ago to today?
I think a little bit, as Lohan said, you know, the days of vinyl, for me, it created a lot more community. You know, I jumped in a van, I drove around London, dropping the records off to shops. I hung out in the shops, and I think that's what's slightly missing a little bit for some of the younger generation now, that they hang out on the internet, and it's such a big, lonely place in that respect. I forged a lot of relationships just through selling the product and being in the retail outlets that sold them. So, yeah, they were good times, as Lohan said. It was a time where you could really forge relationships over something that you both had passion about.
And for a business like Toolroom, which has got a sizable team and therefore a sizable overhead, what was the impact on you and your business when everything moved online and switched initially to downloads?
We've always been a DJ's label. You know, my brother's kind of the face of the label. We make records for DJs to play at the weekend. And that's always been our kind of USP. Yes, it was tough when it kind of changed, but you have to look further than just selling music. You know, you have to branch out into other things. I think you have to have a certain amount of time selling the music to give you the right to then branch out into other things. But yeah, we quickly adapted into other areas, things like the academy that we do, the events, to kind of make up for it.
And Simon, if I could just turn to you, I mean, the shift to online and the shift to digital meant that obtaining music by any which way you wanted to, be it paid or otherwise, became much easier. Was or is piracy really the issue it's made out to be?
I mean, it's undoubtedly been a massive issue. I mean, I used to work at a label called Gut Records in the noughties, and we were, I'm sure Lohan knows that, and that, I think the transition from CD to downloads was a much harder transition, and was affected more by piracy than I think we have been now. I don't really sort of believe there's sort of one illegal download equals one lost sale. I think that's kind of a formula that I've heard people talk about, and I completely disagree with that. I think if someone is actively seeking your music out and consuming it somehow, then you want to try and find out their journey. And I think the trick is, and perhaps we're on the way to it being solved, is how do you monetize that journey? How do you, if you can track that person and turn that person who's potentially never going to ever buy your music, because there is a generation of people that will never pay a penny to download your music, but they will pay 60 quid for a hoodie. They'll pay £1,000 to come to Miami. They'll pay the same to go to Tomorrowland. So if you can get them involved in a slightly different journey to the traditional one, then for me, that's a massive positive. But obviously, that's my opinion.
Jenni, if I could come to you, obviously, once you get past downloads, you're into the game changer of a streaming environment and a play world rather than an ownership world. AEI embraced streaming pretty much from the get-go and has built a business model effectively around it. Why did you embrace it at such an early stage, and how did it impact on your artists? How did you focus them differently?
I mean, the first sort of step into YouTube for us was 10 years ago when, well, next year, 10 years, when Luke launched UKF. And I think if you asked Luke the question, his response would be, it was about building a community. It was the social aspect, which as a young boy, he found you couldn't get through going out and maybe buying music. There wasn't an opportunity to talk to your audience, talk to your fans, maybe test music. And I think from his perspective, you know, at that point, drum and bass and dubstep was not being played on Radio 1. So for him to sort of set up this platform to upload tracks and to test music, he was building that kind of online community. And I get what Stuart was saying about, you know, you're losing that kind of, you know, hand-to-hand personal touch. but what you are gaining is massive, massive eyeballs and huge, huge numbers. And I think, obviously the music discovery side of it is huge as well. And I think that's the kind of side of it you won't get with physical product and from just downloads alone. And I think, off the back of the business we've got with YouTube now, we've got, circa 45 million subscribers within our network. We work with 7 channels. And we're in the business of building brands off it. Label services are different to the way they used to be. We're in a position now where we can work with a new artist. We're about developing new talent, so we can take a track with an artist that no one's ever heard of, upload it, and just test it to market. Our channels are recognized, respected brands, so we're allowed to experiment and play about with new music. If the track works and the artist cuts through, if they're signed, brilliant, we can work with them. If they're not signed, we can sign them to the label. We can take them on tour, we can publish them. We can offer them a whole 360 model within our organization. So I think, using it very much as a kind of social and discovery platform is why it's worked so well for us.
It's amazing. So, and around the same time, I guess, of AEI's trajectory of embracing streaming, Lohan, Ministry of Sound, kind of reached the peak of its powers and sold. What was it that drove the decision for such an iconic label to sell?
That question. We were always a very different size and shape of label. We weren't like a lot of the labels that I meet here and have met over the years. There was a uniqueness to Ministry that grew out of the fact that we were a nightclub and we were trying to recreate that nightclub experience in the products that we produce. I mean, we made some of the first ever mixed compilations, DJ mixed compilations, our Tony Humphrey Sessions albums, the annuals back at the beginning, mixed by Pete, became part of everybody's music collections. And the journey that we went on with that business was that we needed music to fill those albums, and so we started signing dance singles, and we started up dance labels, but we were very singles focused. So we weren't building big artist catalogues because we wanted hits to drive our comps, and that was the model. And the compilations were selling, at their peak, we were selling 5-6 million albums a year and having lots of hit records. So that was our focus. And we weathered the transition to downloads well. It was bumpy, but we worked out that it wasn't just going to be a single track download market. We could sell downloadable albums. And that was a great business. And we had a fantastic business with Apple for 10 years. But then when streaming appeared on the horizon and my various spats with different digital music services are well known, it became apparent that you weren't going to be able to monetize playlists in the way that we were monetizing compilations. And our business had gone from selling lots of compilations and having hit records, and we'd then taken a lot of the profit that we were making to sign and develop artists, and the peak of that was London Grammar. But I could see what was coming on the horizon as people were going to move to streaming. They weren't going to be buying compilation packages anymore. There was no way of monetizing playlists unless you owned all of the content that was on those playlists. And also the way that the streaming services work, they're global music services. So if you wanted to break an artist, you had to have a global marketing structure. So on both counts, in the compilation business, I wasn't going to be able to sell albums anymore, and I wasn't going to be able to monetize playlists, which is why we were slow into playlisting. And then on artists, I needed to have a global marketing structure to really deliver for the bands that we were signing. So us owning Ministry of Sound ourselves wasn't the best home for Ministry of Sound recordings. Being part of a major label was the best home. And now, what Sony are doing with playlisting and building the whole Ministry of Sound playlisting structure across all the digital music services is something that we couldn't do because we didn't have all the catalogue to justify that. And they've done a fantastic job in taking the label to the next level.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I don't think I've heard the answer before, so it was great to get it from the horse's mouth. Simon, Axtone, certainly from my perspective, have adapted to streaming, but has it changed the music that you sign?
It's certainly sort of changed the focus, and you have to really think about where will that record live DSP-wise, because more often than not, Spotify is the strongest streaming platform for us, but we also have instances where actually the Apple streams will outstrip Spotify, which is unusual, but it does happen. And we know, because of the specific curators within those DSPs, what their tastes are like as well. So we're kind of conscious when we're signing something. First of all, the first thought is this something that Axwell will play? That's always the first kind of thought over and above anything. And then if it's not, then we're thinking, well, if it's not, which other DJs will play it? Or is it just a completely non-DJ record? And if that's the case, then we're thinking, is it something for maybe one of Jenni's channels, for example, to launch? Because obviously the obvious place for launching a big stadium house track is within a big stadium house DJ set, which is obviously Axwell or Swedish House Mafia. But if it's something outside our normal remit, then we're thinking, what's the next big platform? Is it Proximity? Is it one of Jenni's brands? Or is it Garrick's? Or is it just going to go through the kind of Mint Syndicate, which is Austin Kramer's kind of bunch of playlists that he does? So does it start on Crate Diggers, move through Fresh to Mint? So we're certainly kind of considering way more kind of aspects than we originally were, because the label was literally just set up purely to put out bangers. But unfortunately, that kind of model is gone, because when I started 9 years ago, there wasn't a release schedule. We could live off 2 releases a year, maybe 3, and you had the licensing, you had the exclusive licensing, and that would keep us going for a year. So it was great, 2-3 records a year. You could really kind of milk that kind of whole planning. But now it's a lot quicker, and also to generate the same amount of money on streaming, it's a lot longer. It's a lot longer tail. However, what is interesting is now with streaming, you can find yourself year 2 earning more than you did year 1, which when we were doing when Beatport and licensing was the main income stream, you would know, because at that time Beatport gave you real-time kind of sales info. You would know almost within the first hour whether you're going to have a top 10 or a number 1, and if you have a number 1 on Beatport, then you knew that the licensing was going to be strong. So you had that instant info almost straight off the bat.
Yeah, thanks. Jon, so you were the catalyst, and I guess you must have stared down all of these issues and stared at your label and gone, now what? So just tell us all what you did. What was the decision you made, and what's been the result?
It's been interesting. It's definitely been interesting. I think the main thing to understand about the position I'm coming from with all of this is that I looked at myself as an artist as a business. I didn't look at myself as a record label business. I didn't look at myself as a management company business. I didn't look at myself as a channel like Jen's company has or anything like that. And I thought, well, I keep a roof over my head and I put food on the table the most by playing music, not making and releasing music. So what can I do to drive that to happen more often? Because artists reach a certain level at certain times, and sometimes I felt that the industry wasn't moving quickly enough to support those artists in my area. I'm not talking about any of the areas that these guys work in. I'm just relating this specifically to myself. And I thought, well, what can I do? And I've been following a lot of the hip-hop guys, like Chance the Rapper, and looking at what they've done, for example. And the hip-hop guys are absolutely killing it now. They worked out their sort of, let's call it a strategy. They gave away a lot of music for free. But they then realised and worked out when and how to charge. So Chance, for example, gave out all these mixtapes for free. And I've definitely found that the more sort of live mixes I put out definitely gets more interaction than, say, putting out single tracks or EPs. So Chance was doing this all the time. And then eventually Apple came in last year and gave him $500,000 for a 2-week exclusive on his latest mixtape. So for years of plugging away, he earned $500,000 that he could then go and support his family with. And I thought that was amazing. I thought, fair play to the guy. He's stuck to his guns, he's kept his head down, he's provided quality every single time, and now he's been finally paid something that he probably would never have been paid if he'd gone the other route. I'm not relating this to techno music, by the way. I'm not saying it's as popular mainstream music as hip-hop has become now. But I was like, I need more listens, I need more awareness, I need more eyeballs, and that will in turn make me more attractive to promoters. And it may move me up the billing, it may earn me more money, put more food on the table, support things, keep reinvesting in myself and keep reinvesting in going into better studios, for example, because those costs haven't gone down. To go into a really good studio and get a really good mix is expensive, and a lot of up-and-coming artists can't do that. So I was kind of saying to other up-and-coming producers, like, have my parts to my records for free. They've been mixed, just have them, you know? So it looks free, and there's a slight twist. Because I own all my music, and no other third party owns it, no other record label owns it, I own all the masters, I control all the publishing, very important point. I probably earn more money now out of doing this than I did from just releasing downloads. And I'm actually coming from a place where I've had 2 #1 overall genre chart placings, albeit a little while ago, but I've earned money out of downloads, and I've seen how downloads have massively decreased. So as part of the way of looking at myself as a business, I had to understand what are and how are people consuming music. And the answer was on their mobile phone. It's their life. You take that away from them, it's like the end of the world. They feel frozen, they can't do anything, they can't buy anything, they can't see anything, they can't see what their friends are up to, they can't see how many likes they got, all this kind of stuff. This is how they're listening to music, whether we like it or not. So one of the reasons Spotify became so popular was because it had a killer mobile phone app. One of the reasons YouTube now is making gains is because it improved that app. So I was like, I've got to do something on streaming, and I've got to encourage people to come and hear my music. I'm not concerned with sales, I'm concerned with listens. How many people are listening to my music? That was the pure driving factor. And because I own all that music, I earn all the money from it. I probably earn more in publishing off of giving my stuff away for free, bizarrely, than I would if I released it just traditionally through a download. So it's kind of around the houses a little bit, but hopefully you understand.
So Dean, listening to what Jon says, you know, you have and do manage some of the biggest dance music artists in the world, and you've seen the genre move from underground to everywhere. Should we now give up on ownership and move to pay to play? Do you even need a label now?
Who? The artist? Or, do you need a label? I think that, when deadmau5 had a label before he was actually deadmau5. And, I remember reading something that Simon Dommel wrote in DJ Mag, and he said deadmau5 was the first true superstar to break out of Beatport. But I couldn't keep up with his output. I remember we had 8 records in the top 10 one day, and I got a phone call saying, "Can you slow down, please, because this is looking like deadmau5's download site." But it's very much changed now. I mean, Beatport's in a much better place than it was 3 or 4 years ago, which is great. Those sales have gone up. They've really fixed that business, which is great. But our biggest challenge now is the gatekeepers that are now the playlists, and they're my biggest frustration, because it's somebody's view of what goes on that playlist. So, I said to everyone that works with me is stop moaning about the gatekeepers, build your own playlist. That is the key for everything now. Build your own. You're in control of that. And that's what we've done with, for lack of a better playlist, with deadmau5. That has been our #1 priority for the last 18 months. And, I think what Axtone is the best example of that, because, what are you, nearly 600,000?
It's about 450.
Amazing numbers. We're nowhere near that. But you are in control of your playlist every single moment. It's not anybody else. I don't like that record. It's you're in control. That's the biggest thing, I think, that, you know, from music now is, and how it's consumed, is you've got to control your own playlist and push your own playlist, or YouTube or whatever you're in control of, because we moaned about radio gatekeepers, playlist meetings, and all this, and we're back there again. 5 people control DSPs and tell the world that this is what electronic music is. I'm like, well, it's not my electronic music. And it blows my mind. I said to Gary Richards said to me the other day, he said, I was trying to book all of his new festivals. And he said, I went on Mint, Crate Diggers, Fresh Electro, whatever. And he was like, there was no artist on there that I would book. And I'm like, wow, that is crazy.
So they're making taste, not reflecting taste.
Yeah, and that, why I go back to, it's the most important thing. We have to control our own playlists and market our own playlists, because nobody can fuck with that.
I can see that going up on Twitter. So Matt, coming to you, this point about control is there's a theme emerging, be it how you run your label, how you create your market, you know, creating a playlist, or even actually selling an organisation was a controlled decision. It was a logical decision. Do you want to just talk about AWAL, because that presumably places control to the artist, and how does it set itself up?
Yeah, AWAL's, it's been quite an interesting journey. We started sort of a label services thing about 6 years ago. We mainly established acts who maybe the major labels or big indies have built up, and we sort of worked off the back of that, and it's completely evolved over 6 years to now being the most exciting things are brand new things that have come through us. And I guess I'd echo, well, to start with, back to your question, all the artists that we work with retain their own copyrights, so we work as a service to them. So it's backwards to a label who would sign them. We actually serve them and give them all the services they would want from a label. And where it's really worked is artists who have their own identity. They kind of know what they want to do, and then we've been able to sort of plug them into Spotify and Apple and all those places and help them build. And actually, it's been funny to see the backwards sort of breaking of artists where they start with Spotify or SoundCloud and build up. What's really important in developing acts is live and tickets and that building. And then with someone like Rex Orange County recently, actually now it's going back to making lots of vinyl and putting that out. And we recently put, for the first time, manufactured some vinyl for him. He went to number 2 on Amazon US pre-orders for any physical product in the whole country. And it's funny to see what's happening there. But I guess the key takeaway, back to what Dean's saying, is in this modern, sort of the modern architecture of what's happening, you have to be able to control and build a culture around your business or your artist that you can take with you and influence people with, because you don't want to have to leave it to, a faceless person in LA who's in an editorial team. You need to be able to build more than that. And whilst you want those people on board, you also want to build everything. So with an artist like Rex, we've seen him, he gets playlists, but it's not about that at all. He's built this kind of cult following. On a sort of smaller scale for artists that won't be as big as that, I think it's about building that culture. I used to work for a long time at Hospital Records, and it's been good to see them diversify their business from, having tracks on the Radio 1 playlist and doing well, to now actually having an incredible events brand, having their own merchandise store that they fulfill themselves. And I think there's great examples on this panel and in this room of people who've been able to do that.
I think at one point, Hospital's best-selling merchandise was a doormat. That's just random, isn't it? So, Stuart, if I can come to you, so I do think creating and managing a market and controlling your assets seems to be like the consistent point, either recognising you can or you can't, and then making decisions. How does Toolroom grow its market and control its business?
I think it's, for me, the label's all about the people that work there. A record label isn't a logo, it's not a fancy office, it's the people that make the record label. And it takes people. We've always looked at people like the ministry and how they've invested in people to make their business work, and we did the same thing. We've had times when it's gone big, and we've now, at this particular point, I would say we've probably got the right amount of staff, the right players on the pitch, so to speak. But I think it's about having the right people there at the label that understand the music that you're trying to do, understand the vision, and work well as a team. And I'm so lucky to have 12 members of staff, 80% of them been with me for 10 years. But again, I echo what Dean was saying, it is about control. It's about control and working with the artist and trying to get the most out of it for everyone. And as we were saying before, if it means diversifying into other things, we've gone very heavy with the Toolroom Academy because for us, it's a way to find some new talent. It's a way to create an environment for new talent to collaborate and chat and talk and learn the industry. So yeah, for me, it's people. People make businesses. And again, like Dean said, it shouldn't be 5 people. I agree with him. I look at the same playlist and think that's not my electronic music. And we are all publishers. We all are content creators. So there's no reason that we shouldn't be doing our own playlists and pushing that forward ourselves.
And how important is Mark as a DJ and Mark's radio show and its accessibility on platforms like Spotify in terms of making sure that you have audience, eyeballs, ears, all the words?
Yeah, Mark's always been the face of the label. He rarely comes into the office because of his touring schedule and his studio work. But when he comes in, his passion and drive really injects something into the guys that are there, because they are Monday to Friday head down working in an office. And when the kind of full stop to what they do comes in and shares his experience, it buzzes them up to do what they want to do. But one thing I would say, I've got 12 people that all want to be the best at their job. They're not there to try and get an opportunity to get in the studio or go and gig with Mark. They want to be the best at licensing. They want to be the best PR. They want to be the best marketing. So it's people and understanding their roles, yeah.
And Jenni, AEI invests heavily in people, and I think if we look back at what you described as how Luke in particular embraced YouTube and streaming, you clearly created a market and an audience. Are you now kind of in the same place, which is the role and importance of people?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly to echo what Stuart said, if you don't have the right people in the right seats in the bus, so to speak, none of it makes sense. So we invest hugely into our team. The whole sort of model of our business is about supporting young entrepreneurs, nurturing the next kind of generation of talent. And I think we do that through our channels, our business partners, the brands that we work with. The curators behind our YouTube channels, they're our A&Rs, they're the stars of the future. We don't have a recordings team of A&R people. They're the heads of the channels. They do that job for us. So purely by us investing into them and helping them build a team around their brand, that in itself is a story for success. In terms of outside of the YouTube side of the business and the streaming side, company-wide, investing in our people is the absolute priority for us just now. My background is in 20 years of live events, and now I'm sort of overseeing the culture and community aspects of our business. If you don't invest into your people, if you don't make sure they have the best mental, physical health and well-being and the best tools to do their job, then ultimately the bottom line means nothing. So yeah, have the right people, have the most passionate, the best people in the best jobs at all times, look after them, nurture them, create a culture and a community around them that enables them to grow and for them to be inspired. And I think it's, with the music business the way it is now, it's hugely, hugely hard to get into. It's getting more and more competitive all the time. And I think that, it's frightening to see when we advertise for a job, you get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of CVs through your door within the first 48 hours, which is good in one respect, but bad in another, because it shows that, in one way it looks like the industry's growing, but actually in some respects the opportunities are shrinking. So it is so important that you've got the right people on board at all times. So, but it's fine having a team. You have to make sure you retain them. So, look after them, give them the best training, give them the best education you can, send them on workshops, send them to courses, send them out of their comfort zone and make them learn every single day, because, at the end of the day, if you don't grow, you go. So it's absolutely key that you've got those people on board and that they're the best of the best at all times.
That's amazing. So, Jon, it was really eloquent hearing how you've described your decision around your business, because it was based around you as a business. So does that, with every label, I mean, it kind of sounds like every label's taking a different approach, but I'll kind of summarise where the similarities are later. But does that mean that there's a difference between labels as a vehicle for a DJ and labels that are standalone businesses without, you know, the kind of the kingpin or what the female version of a pin is, but without the leader at the top that's a DJ?
Maybe, yeah. First of all, I'd say thanks for calling me eloquent. My mum will be really proud. It's the first time anyone's ever said that.
Do you want me to send her an email?
Yeah, can we just rewind it and play it again?
Yeah, no problem. It's being recorded, it's
Thanks.
all right.
Okay, she'll love it. Thank you. Hi, Mum. I mean, I've worked on both sides. I've worked with one of the biggest, most recognisable DJs on the planet, with one of the friendliest faces. You know, everywhere he goes, he's instantly recognised. You know, we've had fish and chips down in Hove in a grotty little cafe, and there's somebody wanting a picture. You know, whereas at the same time, we've been in Melbourne, and you know, just walks down the street, and it's like, hey, God, you know. So there's plus and minus, obviously, about that in terms of heading up a label, because you know, some of the things I found that every time I open my mouth about Intech, especially with trying to put on events, is like, when can Carl play? When can Carl play? When can Carl play? And it's like, it's trying to make the promoters also understand that actually the roster's not just about Carl. Yeah, it'd be great if he was available and he could come and play, but we're also trying to build the future. And Intech has definitely been a label that's released a lot of music from some unsigned artists and unsigned acts, and you know, we don't have the resources to develop them further as much as we might like. So I think certainly on the flip side of that, if you take control, which is obviously the key word here today so far, yourself, then you build your own audience as long as you keep plugging away. And I think frequency is also key. You know, Dean obviously mentioned about deadmau5 before and 8 tracks in the top 10, but I think if you're working your own channels and you keep feeding your audience, they keep coming back. And actually, the more that often people see things and people talking about it online, that brings more people into you that perhaps didn't know you were there, and they like your music, and now they so on and so on and so on. So it's like it takes a while, you know, like this isn't anything that will happen overnight. You've got to keep doing this for probably a good few years. And from my own experience of now doing it, I would say that it's a slow burner, but it's definitely had a positive effect. Yeah. Financially, and by bringing in people and getting more plays and more listens. So, I mean, how many superstar DJs are going to come through that aren't already the top guys? Like, I think that's the main question. Who are going to want to have a record label? Because for me, you know, for the last 25 years, it's been the same people, all bar a few exceptions, that have really broken through. And what happens when they decide it's no longer for them and they want to put their feet up and enjoy the rewards of their work? I don't know, you know. I don't know if record labels these days are as needed in my level, because they don't invest as such, because they don't have the resources, because download sales, whether we like it or not, in my genre, specific genre, are down. I mean, can you reinvest in an artist when you only have to sell 300 units to get a Beatport top 10 techno? No. Yeah. So how do you go about that, you know? Do you need that mainstream figure to get behind you? You know, maybe they start playing your music and you figure out a way, but I think the most important thing is that actually you've got to put yourself in front of promoters, because they're the people that are actually going to make the decisions that help keep your roof over your head and actually able to earn the money to reinvest in yourself and improve and become better all the time. So for any up-and-coming artist out there, I would say, you know, what's the best description? Probably, we have all this technology and it seems to control a lot of people, but actually you can control the technology. So go in the studio, focus on making great music. Don't worry about social media. Just become a good producer. Then start putting it out. And put it out frequently, build your audience. And once you build your audience, you may find that a channel like Jen's comes in and says, hi, we'd like to help supporting you. You know, maybe they do it before that. Maybe they see your potential before that with some of the people that work there. Maybe a record label comes in and you feel that's the right time to help push you further because they have the resources and the budget to be able to do so. But again, be very careful about who you choose, because it has to be a right fit. You know, not just financially, but also in terms of the ethos of what you're trying to do. And I think if you can stay true to your core and be authentic the whole way, then I think then you're well on your way. And that's what I would encourage any up-and-coming producer and DJ to do at the moment. You know, don't worry about social media, to be honest.
Yeah.
Get in the studio and be as good as you can.
Dean, do you think that we're genuinely at like a crossroads in how dance music labels are going to operate and exist, or do you think we'll all look back at having a drink in the pub in 10 years' time and wonder what all the fuss was about?
Well, it changes weekly, monthly, how you promote, distribute, sell, download. It changes. It's always changing. There's always somebody doing something different, and I love that. You know, that's what I love about the mod. Yes, it's. I feel that it's more difficult to make money, and like Lohan goes back to those amazing compilation days. You know, you would kill to get on those compilations. You know, and if you could get a record on a Now compilation, you'd hit the jackpot, and that sold, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 million copies. You know, and those things are getting less and less and less. That is difficult. So it is hard to make money and invest. I think that's the key word. It's hard to go, okay, we're going to invest this amount of money into this artist. It's more risky now, I feel, than it's ever been, because it's hard to get money back. You know, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million streams, 10. You know, we're with Cobalt, and you know, our biggest, or Joel's biggest streamed record off of his last album was an 88 BPM trip hop record called Snow Cone. Well, it was that big because it went on all of the chill playlists.
Yeah.
And those chill playlists don't change on a weekly basis. Some of them don't even change month to month. And it's still on 5 of the biggest chill playlists right now. And it done 15 million streams. Well, there was much bigger records in, like, festival records on that album. But they done nowhere near that. So that's really interesting in our current model, that you can get on certain playlists, on Spotify playlists, that just keep racking up those streams. So, you know, we sit there and talk about records now, and I go, well, we need a chill mix of this, we need that, we need an a cappella, we need a, you know, your A&R and records completely differently now than I did when I first started in the business. You had your mix, and then you did a bunch of remixes and put it out, and bam, that was it. And now you're, okay, well, I need to focus on this playlist, this, and this, and I don't like. It's
contrived.
Yeah, it's. I don't like that. What's happened in that side of the business.
So Matt, when you hear comments like, as an emerging artist, you now know you're not really going to get the investment. What would your advice be to an emerging artist? Would chase a label deal or be the label?
I think it depends on what it is. I think it's harder than ever if you're making underground music, and I think probably everyone would agree with that. But if you're making more popular music, it's actually, we're finding it quite easy to invest in things early. We do a thing that we call sort of playing tennis with the data. So we'll give a brand new thing that we think is good some money to help them record their first EP properly, get videos, PR, all the things they're going to need to try and get people to kind of get into it. Put it out there. Hopefully some good things will happen. We'll look at data, it will come back, and then we'll reinvest in that and build and build. So that's happening a lot. I think the only anecdote I'll give you is that what's happening at the moment is there's going to be an awful lot of money flooding back into music through what's happening with streaming. And I guess the challenge to everyone in this room and the new kind of breed of entrepreneurs is, how do you exploit that opportunity, build a business in a new way that is fit for what's happening? And ideally, we think there's going to be a whole load more artists earning a living than there ever has been. There might be less superstars at the top, but there might be hundreds of thousands of people making a living off being a professional artist, which we think is a good thing.
I think we're literally on time. I think if I could summarise it, and it's been really enjoyable to listen to. I've forgotten I'm moderating at times. I don't think there's any wrong or right model on the stage. I just think there's what's right for you, either as an artist or a label. And I think the key thing as well is make your market and control as much as you can, and be sincere about what you're doing and be as good as you can be. I'm looking over there. I know we're on like minus 52 seconds. Is there time for one question? Have we been benevolent, or do you want me to scarper off the stage? Can I have one? So yeah, one question. Get your hand up quick if you've got a question, otherwise we're going to scoot. Done. Brilliant, thank you. Can you stand up and say who you are and what you do and ask the question, please?
Hi, Elizabeth Bolanini. I write tracks, do a lot of voiceovers as well. And obviously, I'm older, so I'm in that middle range. And so what I've got from today is, the old way would sort of be to go out there and give it out to other people, like a manager or company. And I'm just re-saying what you said, that taking control, because I work with some young guys with a label. And a lot of what you said today, I think, has been brilliant to me, to go back to them and just say, you can take control and do it. Because they're like, oh, we want to, if we get a booking, or if we do this, or it's going to be better if we do that. But no, they can sort of take that control themselves, really.
Definitely. If I could just add to that, though, make sure that you make them completely aware that it's a longer journey.
Yeah,
okay,
it's
to
not
start
as
with.
instantaneous.
Because you're not going to get the press. You're not going to get, the awareness. You have to build that yourself, and that takes time. So get the music done, get it good, then start, and just understand that it's a building process, step by step by step, month by month, and keep at it, because if you get frustrated and you stop, then you won't build.
I think it's really important for me to add, being at AWAL and artists owning their own rights and all that stuff, it might be the right look to give a track to a label to get you that boost you need, and then come back into doing it yourself. I think you can navigate all the options. The biggest thing is, if you're signing something to someone, or you're going to work with us, whoever they are, what are they doing for you and what are they taking from you? And I think that's the rule of life.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you. That's it, I'm afraid. Thank you to the panel for finding the energy. Thank you to you. Cheers, mate.